Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Local Soccer Show. Today we have a really special guest. I'm going to introduce her in just a minute, but before we do, special thank you to Evangelista Sports for all their support. Soccer season for the summer is just around the corner. Visit Evangelista Sports for all your soccer gear. And they also supply teams with jerseys, shorts, shoes, socks, you name it. They have it. Thanks again to Evangelista Sports. And don't forget, please subscribe to the channel, put a like on the video, and spread the word. We're just two soccer dads that love amateur soccer in our country and our province. We like to share ideas. We want to improve the amateur soccer for everyone. If there's anything people can learn and share, that's what we're all about. So, without further ado, we're going to have a little intro video and then I'll introduce our special guest. I would like to welcome from Soccer Quebec the new president, Felicia Schiro. Welcome, Felicia. How are you?
Hi, Marcel. I'm doing well. And yourself?
Doing well, thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to have you on the show. We'll talk about a whole bunch of different topics on and off the pitch. But let's go down memory lane, Felicia. Why don't you share a little bit about your background? Sorry, how you fell in love with a beautiful game when you played it as a kid or teenager. Why don't you share a little bit of your story?
Well, first off, thank you so much, Marcello, for having me on your podcast. It's a pleasure for me to be discussing soccer with people who love the sport. And it's fun you mentioned soccer dads. Well, I considered myself a soccer mom for a very, very long time. So it's a perfect connection. So, Felicia Schiro. Well, basically, I didn't know in my back in my day, I guess, the amateur environment that's available today to our kids. You know, my kids started in the club soccer, as many players do today. I basically played after school soccer, as I did basketball, as I did track and field. So it was during my high school days that I really exposed myself to a variety of sports, because I think physical activity is extremely important. And so I began with that. I had, I believe at the time was my mathematics teacher who was my coach. So not a lot of learning, but a lot of fun. And from that, basically, I stopped playing after when I continued my post-secondary education in college and in university. And then once I had kids of my own, when my son decided to lace up his cleats for the first time, we were between hockey and soccer. Well, I'm not much of a skater, so I decided that where I could do some real contribution and some work was on the soccer field. So I decided to get involved as a parent volunteer, learning the ropes from different technical directors and people that had much more experience than myself. I truly believe in coach education. So anytime there was a course that was offered, any type of training, I was definitely on board. And through that, as the years went on, I became more and more comfortable in the role. Then my daughter decided that she was going to start playing also at the age of 4. And so what I did for Stefano, I decided I was going to do for Maya. And the love for the game just increased and continues to increase and grows. What I did realize coaching girls soccer is that we had a long road ahead of ourselves. We had, and we've made a lot of strides, but we still have work to do where resources were not necessarily available, about 10, 15 years ago, as much as they were for boys soccer. And there's a part of me that accepted the fact that, you have to put the money towards example where there's more quantity, not necessarily quality, but that we had to find sources of revenue. We had to find the right coaches as well, qualified coaches to help girls get involved. First of all, to attract them to the sport, to make them understand that there was room for them as well, and then to keep them interested and motivated. And I found that I began at the soccer club CS Étoile de l'Est in Duvernay-Laval. And eventually I was asked by the president at the time of the club if I wanted to join the ranks of the board of directors and become we'll call it director, even if it was still
Yeah.
volunteer work, but director of the girls program. And so I took on that challenge because it was something that was extremely important for me. And I saw that we had a lot of room to grow. So lucky enough, there were people that were willing to listen, people that had the same aspirations that I did for girls soccer here in Quebec. And we started
Yeah.
to work at that a bit at a time, and very, very proud of the work that I did at that club, brought on board different qualified people that helped us work the girls program. Before I left the club, we were able to promote 2 AAA girls teams. So you can see that the cycle went full circle,
Right.
and
Yeah.
lately with my nomination to this position at the board of directors of Soccer Quebec, a lot of the parents of these girls that I coached in the past, and we helped, put together a program. We helped create belief in it and people's buy-in. While I got a lot of compliments and congratulations, well merited, well deserved. It's nice to see a woman in this position. Hoping that you
Yeah.
continue to do some of the good work you did at the club level and whatnot. So I think all that just shows that where I had a project in mind and I believed in something, there were a lot of other people around the
Yeah.
table that wanted to support that, because you can't do it alone, and that we were able to create something that we hung on to. And I see a lot of these girls now, they're part of provincial selection programs, they're part of regional select programs, and
Yeah.
it's nice to see. So you start from the grassroots, and for those
Yeah.
who want to go towards elite, well, you create the path, you help create the path for them. And for those
Right.
who remain in what's recreational, there's room for them as well, because I think if we don't understand or we don't realize that, the biggest percentage of the people who play the sport is for recreational purposes, then we're not
Yeah.
understanding the sport at all in Quebec, right? But there is the
Right.
elite, that 10 or 15% is there. We need to also
Mm-hmm.
channel them. We need to give them all the resources, all the tools, all the qualifications necessary, because if their aspiration is to achieve, the opportunity at least to possibly be selected on a national team, why can't it be possible in Canada? And where we're going with soccer today in Canada, on the women's team and with the men's team as well, I think it's time for us to really not only make our way to
Yeah.
the international stage, but to find a place where we stay there. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you see, we finally made the World Cup for the first time since 1986. You hope it's not just a one-shot deal, that we can make it on a regular basis. In 2026, we're the host country, so we had easy access to the tournament. But I agree with you, going forward, you would hope it will be something that we could make it, or at least compete to try to make it, compared to all these years that we were not in the World Cup.
Exactly. I think we
Yeah.
need to find some form of permanency. And
Mhm.
when Canada finds itself on the international stage, it's not a surprise. It's part of what our legacy that we're gonna
Yeah.
create, we're gonna make, and we need to look forward to being one of these countries where, when we take the field, that countries think twice about taking us on, because we're doing good work at the grassroots level.
Absolutely. So it's my understanding, Felicia, you're still coaching today despite your role as president at the federation, correct?
Yeah, I'm still a
Yes. So
volunteer.
which club and which age group, if you don't mind sharing?
Well, right now I'm with les CS Titans. So
Okay.
they're in Terrebonne and Bodie-Filion in the Laurentides
Okay.
region. I'm overseeing. I'm coordinator for the U4, 5, and 6 program. So I put
Okay.
together the program. We take it from a very young age. I have young
Yeah.
educators that are with me. So often they're players within the club that are have gone through the ranks. U16, U17. Senior players that want to give
Yeah.
back to the community and to the sport. So it's a way to provide them a job opportunity, and that they can
Yeah.
put back into application what they've learned. So it's fun to see that it's basically kind of like a family affair. They're growing from within and they're giving back. So there's that program. I'm also an educator on the CDC program. So
Okay.
that's U7, 8 to U12, and
Yeah.
right now I'm part of the coaching staff for the youth 13 girls double A team, which is considered today the LDR, Ligue de Développement Interrégional.
Yes.
So I've been with that group now. It's my 3rd summer with them, and
Okay.
again, I'm proud to say that I came in, and it was a club where the girls soccer in the winter program, very few. There were maybe 2,
Hmm.
3 girls, and because there were only so little, we have to put them with the boys program. So they never really found their own group. And following the first summer that I was with them, we had increased registration. And this year we're at an all-time high with the winter program. In the age group of youth, 12, youth 13, we had, if I'm not mistaken, about 30 girls registered, where once upon a time there were 2 or 3. So it's fun to see. And I think that that's the recognition that makes you understand that all the work you're putting in, there's other people that believe in it, and that the results don't come from the score sheet, but the results come from that, comes from, player retention, comes from people wanting to register again, from new people joining the program. I think that that's where the reward and the recognition comes from. Then, hey, if on the score sheet you find a way to win a couple of games, I'm never going to say no to that. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to reiterate something you said earlier about the feedback you got from parents that you interacted with when you coached earlier and in your role today. I do want to share that in the community. The soccer community is small. Many people have told me that they're really happy you're there. They want to congratulate you, and seeing all your experience and the fact that you're still involved at the grassroots, I think makes you, you know, be a better candidate in terms of the job that you're doing, because you have your feet on the ground versus, like a typical corporation, you have someone in the head office in the Sky Tower. They're not involved with the day to day. And sometimes they make decisions without knowing what's going on, sorry, on the field or in the trenches, as they say. So I find you could bring a unique perspective on issues because you're right there, you see it. And if people talk about micro soccer, CDC, the older kids, you went through it, you're still involved. And I think you could provide a lot of great insights when it comes to making decisions at the Federation.
Well, thank you for
Yeah.
letting me know. I appreciate the
Yeah.
feedback, and I'm happy to hear that people are happy with the nomination, because
Yeah.
we don't do it for popular demand, but if people believe in the person that's there, and if they believe in
Right.
the projects and in the philosophy, I think you have people's buy-in, and it's I think it paves the way for a successful project, a
Yeah.
successful program. So I'm happy to see that people are content or
Yeah.
satisfied to know that the person in me, has shown in the past that when I believe in something, I consult with people around me. I like to exchange on many different
Mhm.
levels. I don't think I have the solutions to all of the issues or all the
Mhm.
dilemmas, but I think I'm somebody who's very open to listen. I'm
Yeah.
constantly learning. I don't think that I'm reaching this position in my life today that I don't have anything to learn. Contrary to that belief, I have even more to learn. I feel like
Mhm.
I need to bring even more to the table. The contribution needs to be even bigger and better. And I think at the end of the day, when I look at everybody that's around the table, we talk about the board of directors, sorry, whether it's the club level, the regional levels, or here at the federation level. I think if people are here, they're here for the right reasons. I like to believe in the fact that people still want to contribute and
Yeah.
want to evolve with the modernization of the sport, and
Mhm.
and I think that the volunteer basis of everything we do in amateur sport in Quebec is so important. It's an integral part of everything we do. Because we talk about cost, cost efficiency and inflation,
Yeah.
and trying to bring the rates down or trying to keep them as low as possible. That's not possible if you don't have volunteers that are really passionate
Right.
about the subject matter. So, and for me, going back to what you said, the comment you made about staying on the ground, it's not for everybody to be able to do, and the
Yeah.
boardroom and the field in this case. I find myself extremely fortunate to be able to do both. I think it's important for me to continue to do both because, like you mentioned, if we make a decision at the board level and all we hear is the feedback from third parties, we'll base our decisions on that information, which is
Yeah.
extremely relevant, extremely pertinent. However, if we're able to see with our own eyes the decisions
Mhm.
we're making, the impact it's having at the grassroots level, at the development stage, at the elite level, then we ourselves are even better informed. We have more information, we're better educated to then come back to the table and say, how do we modernize this? How do we evolve it better? How do we go back? Because sometimes we need to take a step back to be able to evolve, to go forward. We say it all the time in soccer, don't force the pass. you need to find your way forward, but sometimes finding the way forward is playing back, finding the support
Right.
and changing sides. So I mean, that's life. When you're faced with a challenge sometimes and you can't get through that wall, you have to find a way over it or around it. How do you do it? Well, best thing is to go back, analyze what's already in place, take a deep root reflection, go get more information, and then, okay, what are the best possible avenues,
Yeah.
to go forward. So I think that, life is not a game, but life can borrow a lot of notions from a game setting, whether we're talking about,
Hmm.
transformation on a field, or we're talking about strategy, when we're talking about technique. I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of parallels between game settings and the life setting together, and decision making for sure. So
Yeah.
again, I'm really happy to hear that people are happy that it's somebody that's, kind of like from the field, that's there right now to
Yeah.
make sure that that voice is heard. Because sometimes in boardrooms, we have a deep responsibility to ensure that governance and communication and transparency and the
Yeah.
application of rules are followed, that we sometimes lose sight of the sport that we're
Yeah.
managing, so to speak. So but
Yeah.
I'm very confident that with the board members that are there as well now, having worked with them for almost 2 years now, there is that drive and that understanding and that importance that we need to give to the sport. I don't speak just on behalf of myself, but on behalf of the members that are there right now. The sport is part of our discussions at board meetings, so that's very, very encouraging.
Yeah. So, speaking of communication and boardroom decisions and looking at things from on the pitch perspective as well, in the past, we had the former GM of Soccer Quebec, Mathieu Chamberlain, on the show, and we discussed the issue with communication. And one of the things we did notice in the past, it's hard sometimes for information to be trickled from the federation to the region and then to the clubs and then either to the TDs of the clubs and the parents. And when he admitted it too, that there is something that should be done to better this communication and sharing of information, which would make things better for everyone. And the other thing we had discussed with on that topic was involving more people and not having like this hierarchy where everything's at the top level and not enough from the bottom level. So that's why I think we did get this positive feedback with you in that role, and we hope it'll make things more transparent and also the sharing of information or getting more people involved, the people that actually deal with the issues when they're on the field. I think it would be very helpful. So the next thing I want to ask you, what's a typical day like for you when you're on the board at the federation? How would you compare it being on the board of a local club?
Well, I think that there's a more socio-political aspect to being on the board of Soccer Quebec.
Okay.
You represent an institution that is extremely important, that has years and years and years and decades of history. So
Mhm.
making that image shine, making sure that there's a professionalism that the image needs to output, if I can use that term. We need to
Mhm.
project that the federation is a federation that is big. It comes from well-reputed people. It's been built upon values and principles that are important
Mhm.
still today. So I think that aspect is extremely important as well. I think that everything
Yeah.
we do from the local level, the community is smaller. It's still just as important, but it's a smaller community. So when we look at the federation, that becomes amplified, and you have
Yeah.
more eyes looking at you. You have more people willing to criticize or to compliment.
Mhm.
So you have to be very recognizant of this
Yeah.
challenge and this opportunity, because it poses a challenge when things are a little more difficult. When things are going well and there's more success, then it's a great opportunity to make the federation shine.
Yeah.
So typical day is, I mean, I still work. I have a full-time job. I'm a GM
Okay.
in my a GM. I'm a CEO in what I do day to day. So
Okay.
the operations of Soccer Quebec, I leave that in the hands of our staff. They are there to do that, and
Mhm.
they could do a very,
Yeah.
very good job. But we're a young team. We have a few people that have a lot of years experience, but then we have also many people that are new in their position, so they're learning the ropes, they're getting through it, they're acquiring experience. What's important
Yeah.
for us is customer service. I mean, we can't forget that we're within our own community, but customer service is extremely important. So our members
Mm.
have, expectations, they have needs, they need resources, and we need to be the point of reference. So
Yeah.
that's one thing that I'd like for the federation, with all of the players involved. I'd like for us to get to a position where excellence of operations is something that we strive to achieve, and that one
Yeah.
day our members and our clientele, it could be anybody coming from the outside, feels
Mhm.
comfortable that when they have an issue, when they have a question, when they need something resolved, they can come to us, because we're going to be efficient and we're going to put them on the right path to find the answer. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
So I try to basically juggle my volunteer
Yeah.
work with my day-to-day job as well. Lucky for me, the job I do
Yeah.
is 24/7, so I have the flexibility to be able to ensure that I meet all the requirements.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think if you look at the biggest difference maybe between serving on a club or a regional board of directors versus Soccer Quebec is that socio-political aspect that becomes, I think, a
Okay.
little more important or amplified. And it's knowing how to work in collaboration with the GM, which we're presently in the process of hiring, ensuring that
Mm.
he or she has the right tools and has the support from the board of directors to be able to do their job and to be able to achieve the objectives that the strategic plan requires us to achieve.
Yeah. Makes sense. So now let's move on to the little kids. I will start off with the girls. Um, it's been a struggle, let's say, or an issue in many clubs where they want to make teams for the girls. And unfortunately, sometimes they don't have enough girls participating. So sometimes what they'll end up doing is merge age groups together or even merge different skill level girls together just enough to make a team. In an ideal world, it shouldn't really be like that. I'm a big believer in meaningful competition, and the kids should be grouped by their skill level. What do you think is something that can be done by the federation, and any ideas you can suggest to the local clubs to have more girls participating in the sport?
Um, as from a federation perspective, I think what we need to do is we need to be discussing all the different challenges that the clubs and the regions have. I mean,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, we were talking about structure and hierarchy before. There's FIFA, there's CONCACAF, there's Canada Soccer, then there's Soccer Quebec, and then there's the 18 regions. And the 18 regions obviously have clubs within them. We're well over, I believe, 200 clubs right now in Quebec. So I think what's important is to open up the conversation, saying, what are the challenges we're feeling? What are the challenges we're experiencing? At what age group are we experiencing it? And is it like a blanket problematic, a dilemma we have everywhere, or certain regions, certain clubs impacted by it more than others?
Yeah,
We have to think of regions that are further distance from the metropolitan cities like Montreal, Quebec City, Laval. What is their experience like? So I think one is getting the information to be able to analyze what the issues are and how specific they are to different regions. Then the conversation, I think, needs to go down the path of, I often refer to basketball and hockey. I mean, I grew up in basketball as well. You talk
hmm,
about midget, juvenile, bantam, and there it's not like restrictive to one age group. We already see there where we put together, we merge age groups. And I've always
hmm,
been of the philosophy that if you don't have enough quality in the quantity, you need to create it by finding different solutions. And it's thinking
yeah,
outside of the box. So it's basically doing that. It's merging the age groups. I personally feel that, as of 11, 12 is definitely a year where you need to be looking at merging the age groups if you don't have enough in the quantity. In
okay,
some cases, you might be looking at U9, U10. It is a little young, but I mean, if at the end of the day, the registrations don't permit you to have pure age groups, you need to be looking at that sooner than later. If you look at it too late, I feel that you just end up losing interest. The kids end up finding another sport that suits their needs, where they feel that
yeah,
they have a sense of belonging, they're having fun, and they're going to end up signing up for that sport and staying with that sport. So the fun element is in soccer. It comes down to how we animate the groups. It comes down to how we present the CDC and all the learnings. And I think that that is really particular to every club. So I think
yeah,
any sport can be fun depending on how you present it. What becomes extremely important is, how do you ensure that you have enough quantity and quality, which comes back to the point you were making, Marcello, about the skill set. So I agree that we need to look at the skill set. I agree we need to look at merging age groups to ensure that we have the right number to be able to put together a program. And I think we also have to look at succession planning. I look at succession planning in my role at work every day. It's top down. I think with soccer, we need to look at bottom up. How do we plan the succession of? How do we plan the future, basically? So, at U11, 12, do I have a pool of 20 girls, 30 girls, 40 girls? What am I going to need at U13, U14 to be able to have at least one age group, at least two age groups of 15, 16? Sometimes we make the mistake, I think, of saying, well, I'm going to take the top 13 players to make my team. I want to be competitive. I want to win. We need to attract other players. Okay, and what do you do next year if that one or two or three players fall? In the boys, in the boys game or in the boys teams, basically, you have one boy that decides he's going to stop playing or decides to do another sport or moves on to a different level. You have 3 or 4 boys that are ready and available to take that person's spot. If you lose 1 or 2 girls on one team, the team falls apart and you can no longer offer the service. So I think, one, the clubs need to start thinking outside of the box and saying, at what age group, with the history I have, do I start to think about merging age groups? 2, how do I work with my neighboring clubs to find the best possible environment for every age group? And I put an extreme emphasis on working with the club. Let's collaborate. Let's stop this famous scouting. We can't put our heads in the sand and think it doesn't exist. It's not true. We know it exists. We have to be better at that. We have to absolutely be better at that. And I think that's where the federation needs to look at overall, what do we think about, recruiting, player movement? How does it work? How do we set the parameters? That's important. You cannot eliminate player movement. It doesn't make sense. It's not cohesive with player development, because sometimes, a club cannot offer the best service or the best program for that player that needs to move on. But we need to do things with the player at the heart and at the core of everything we do. So if truly we believe that this player deserves this type of environment, let's work with that environment within our region to find them a new home, instead of, finding out that somebody came to steal our player, for example, Right. So I'd like to be able to have the conversations and impact, influence the culture, because it's going to come down to culture and behavior. It's not just about learning. It's not because you create a rule, you put it on paper, and all of a sudden say you're going to apply it, that people are going to start doing it that way. It's a culture. We need to believe that really what we're doing is for the players. And then the other thing I think, with girls soccer especially, is looking at your input and your output. And that means, in my opinion, U4, 5, 6. Where do you start to initiate these players? What is your source of players? So in a lot of our communities, we're multi-ethnic in Quebec. How do we target, or how do we communicate with these communities, with these age groups, to say, hey, come and try? So I think we need to get into the school systems, where in collaboration with the school boards, we're allowed to do presentations just to talk a bit about what is soccer in Quebec, what can we offer you. It's not just about elite. It's about having fun. It's about playing with your friends. It's about making new friends. At one of the clubs I was at one year, we basically had, we were having trouble, and the team was kind of falling apart. Some girls were moving to other clubs. So what I did is I did a few events of, bring a friend along, any friend. She played soccer. She didn't play soccer. So bring a friend. So we had a couple of nights where bring the friends, and lo and behold, there were girls that had a lot of fun. We had the discussions with the child, with the parent, and they ended up signing up. And today they're playing high level soccer. So sometimes it's just a question of opening the doors. So these are different initiatives that I think we can take. And I think, if you ask how can Soccer Quebec help the clubs, maybe it's that. It's creating, after doing the analysis, after consulting all of our partners that really live the reality in their clubs and on the field, saying, okay, what do you guys think can work here? And how do we put it together? And then, Soccer Quebec can sort of put forward these initiatives, and we can support maybe some of these initiatives in the regions throughout the course of the year, and show that we're there to support, show that we're there to help, and show that we're there to also learn, because from those learnings, we should be able to, create more ideas and to evolve the initiatives.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I wanted to move on another topic regarding finances. Kevin Blue, the new CEO and General Secretary of Canada Soccer, recently said that there was a $4 million operating deficit on total expenses of 30 million. And one of the solutions proposed was to raise player fees. I believe right now each player registering pays $9 to Soccer Canada and $7.07 for Soccer Quebec. I just had a two-part question. Firstly, how are the finances at the Soccer Quebec Federation? And the second question was, do you have any concern about raising player fees, given that we've noticed the past few years it's getting more and more expensive to play the sport?
Two very good questions, Marcel. So one, the Soccer Quebec is healthy financially, so we're doing well, and basically we constantly look at how to budget programs, how to ensure that we have the funds that can support our programs. The external sources are always
Hmm.
a source of revenue. We have to look at that partnerships and investors and corporations that want to invest to help support the sport, because it is an amateur sport, and because, to your
Yeah,
point, the sole source of income cannot be the player fees. It has to be a part of it for sure, but it cannot be the only source of revenue. So definitely we always have an eye out. We have groups and committees all constantly look on the lookout to see how do we expand our partnerships. So that's from the Quebec Federation perspective. From Canada Soccer, yes, Kevin Blue is looking on doing the same thing. The philanthropic discussion is a big part of what he wants to do. It's something that I think he brings to the table with his extensive experience. Personally, on the note of player levy fees, inflation exists. It exists at every
yeah,
level. So purchasing groceries is going to cost more. Purchasing gas is going to cost more. Participating in sports will cost more. Programs cost more, material costs more, equipment costs more, salaries increase as well. This is all part of life,
hmm,
basically. I don't think soccer is privy to that or is different. I mean, we're all part of it. Our goal, however, at the board level is always to try to minimize the increase on player levy fees. Like I said, the more subsidies we can get, whether it's programs that are initiatives coming from the government. We work hand in hand with the government as well to go get as much subsidies as possible through various initiatives, various programs, and that does exist. So there's government funds, there's player fees, and there's partnerships that have to be created. I'm a firm believer that we need to work really hard to basically expand the basket with the partners that we go get to help support this in order to minimize the increase to player fees. Okay. Now,
yeah,
I think sometimes where we get stuck is that we don't increase fees on a systemic basis, and then all of a sudden we want to increase by a lot. We kind of want to make up for lost time, and that's I think the
yeah,
danger. So as presidents of the different provinces and territories in Canada, we bring that to the table with Canada Soccer. They're extremely aware that there's a pace that we feel needs to be followed, and that like people look to Quebec Soccer to be transparent in where the money goes, how do we spend the fees, how do we spend, how do we budget. I think that the same expectation is set when you look at Canada Soccer. Where does the money go, what is it needed for? And I think when those conversations take place and when there's an understanding, there's a respect, and then we recognize that some increase has to come. At what pace and how much will it be? And I think those
yeah,
go hand in hand. So to expect that there will not be increase, I think is not realistic. But to expect that presidents and provinces and regions as well will expect to minimize and will work diligently to try to minimize that increase. That's a good expectation that the public can have as well.
yeah. No, I agree. Another question I had for you was regarding club licensing. I wanted your thoughts on, since it's been implemented, something you like and something you don't. And one thing I did feel strongly about is regarding LDP. In the past, you had to earn your spot based on merit to have a team reach AAA. Now it's changed where it's your license that enables you to have a team to participate at the AAA level. So I've seen, and speaking with other friends of mine as well, there not really like a clear correlation, let's say, between the license a club received and how well they run their club, how well they perform on the field. So I feel like sometimes there's a little bit of a contradiction. So I just wanted to know if you had similar feedback and if there's something that could be done to, manage in terms of the performance of the club with their licensing in terms of, I know there's certain standards that have to be met, but is there something even at the federation level that could be done to monitor and see the performance depending on the license the club has?
Well, it's a very, very good discussion, and yeah, club licensing has managed to get a lot of reaction from the public, right? It's something that was fairly new 5 years ago. Now, 4 or 5 years into the system, we're at the point where we're making adjustments as we go. So I believe in the club licensing program. I think it from a CDC perspective, I think it helps player development and player growth. Long gone are the days where at U7, U8, we decide that you're going to be a D1 player for life or a D2 player for life. I mean, that's not realistic,
Yeah.
So I think that coaching education, working on in the format of workshops, stations, technical work, tactical understanding, game situation, it brings variety to every training session. It brings repetition and it brings improvement. So whether you're recreational or elite eventually, you still want to acquire skills that are going to help you have fun. And we have fun when we succeed. Whether you're elite or a recreational player, the more you succeed in the passing, the more you succeed in shooting on the net, well, the more fun you're going to have, right? So I think that the format is well set up for that. I think that club licensing also is important to ensure that the administration, the governance, everything that supports the technical program has to be in place, budget and all that. Those are extremely important elements of nonprofit organizations.
Yeah.
Where it gets a little tricky is that I think in Quebec, when we launched the club recognition program, we also got into the initiatives of merging clubs. It almost happened simultaneously. And so then when there were deficiencies in the program, we didn't really know what belonged to what. Is it because we merged clubs or is it because of the licensing program? And so you could tell that lack of education and the fact that we launched two big initiatives almost simultaneously, I don't think we gave ourselves the time to just evaluate what is club licensing in its purest form and how does club mergers work in its purest form. Is it what's best for the community, what's best for the players, what's best for competition and development? So I think that if I had to go back 5 years with hindsight now, I think I would suggest that we launch them at different times. That's one. Two, a lot of discussions are being had regarding club licensing and the eligibility of a club to put a group in, to your point, LDP. So that is being looked at, it's being analyzed, it's being discussed with all the different levels of people that have an opinion regarding it and then have the experience to tell us, if we do A, this is the consequence. If we do B, this is the consequence. Where do we want to go? So I can tell you that, without sharing too many details, because it's all in the draft motion right now, we're working through it.
Mm-hmm.
It is being looked at with a serious eye to say what is best for the program in cohesion with the licensing program. How do you keep clubs wanting to achieve the best possible level they can of soccer within their club, and how do you ensure that you recognize and reward the merit of certain age groups as well? Because it doesn't mean because you have a national license that all of your age groups are ready for that level of play right away, right? And in some cases, when some clubs have been around for years and years and years, they have managed to put systems in place and programs in place where they do have enough age groups of a certain quality that they can perform in that age group. So we've taken, I think, a big step back to reflect upon that need, and that it's become I think a criticism that needs to be looked at. It's not just people criticizing because of frustration. It's legitimate, and we need to look at it. And I could tell you that the discussions are being had with all the if I can call them the professionals in the business, whether it's staff and it's people at the local club level, local regional level, to ensure that we're looking at all possible angles. And I'm confident that the right proposal will be made in the near future.
Excellent. So, as I mentioned earlier, I was a big proponent of meaningful competition. And what one thing I did not like with the CDC, and I wanted to pick your brain on, was sometimes we've seen a bit of abuse with player movement. I'll give you two examples. I've seen teams where they're very, very strong and they'll register their team in a lower division in a tournament, knowing it'll be an easy path to win that tournament. We've also seen cases of player movement. Let's say a team has three groups at a certain age group. Let's just say U10 has group A, B, C, or one, two, three, for example. And you'll have players in like group one that will play with the group threes. So basically, they move down two levels because they were short on players, as an example. And I know in hockey, you're not allowed to do that. In hockey, you can't go down a level, you can move up a level to help out a club. So I find these two things contradict the spirit of meaningful competition and also making it fun for the kids. Because if you win 12-0, it's not fun. If you lose 12-0, it's not fun. And there's actual data that's been analyzed and studied from like the FIFA Youth Manual that actually shows when kids play with kids similar ability, that's when they could get better. I'm not a big believer of play with someone that's a lot bigger and stronger than you. It's going to make you a better player. I think it actually discourages you. So my question was, what do you think about this thing with the player movement within the CDC? Should there be something maybe in the future where maybe it's an educational thing, an awareness campaign where the coaches, the TDs of the clubs should really think twice about what they do when they allow their clubs to go in tournaments and the player movement within their own groups?
Well, I mean, you bring a very good point, Marcello, and it is like um, à deux volets, like we say in French, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a portion of the tournament that becomes a little trickier, like trickier in the sense where tournaments are club or regional initiatives. You know, depending who wants to set it forward, they put in their parameters, and the expectation is that it's respected. I know that when you sign up for a tournament,
Yeah.
there's a portion of the application, if you will, where you're asked about your previous year, because I think that the intention is there to ensure that you play in the correct category to avoid
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
parameters are set, the applications are put in place. The expectation, I like to call it intellectual honesty. The expectation is that
Yes.
people will be honest enough to
Yeah.
say, I'm going there with the intention of the experience and to your point, significant, true, sincere experience, so that we understand what what we're doing it for, what is the
Yeah.
objective of this participation. That's one. Okay. So, and I think the best way to see it is that if we see, example, I'll take the tournament idea now. If we see in a tournament that, a certain club has a reputation of doing this year in and year out, I think the conversation has to be had between the tournament
Yeah.
organizers and the club direction to say, listen, we've noticed that this has happened. It's 2 years in a row now. We'd like to bring it to your attention. How do you think we can work together to ensure that your children, your players are getting the best possible competition and experience, and the same for everybody else that's participating in this tournament? I think it's a question of mutual respect. So that's where I would
Yeah.
see the conversation going with tournaments. When we talk
Yeah.
about the leagues and player movement with the league, I'm a firm believer that as a federation, we need to look at the idea of setting parameters, consistent parameters with, I'm going to call them consequences for lack of a better word. But I think that,
Yeah.
there's people who do things for the right reason. And, wanting to have a competitive team doesn't mean it's a wrong reason. Sometimes it's the way we go about it. So
Yeah.
I think that it's important that, again, through analysis and consultation, we put on paper, we put forward parameters. This is the expectation for player movement. And I'm a true believer that you need to work with percentages. Example, at, under U12, no player movement. I'm just giving you an example. Under U12,
Yeah.
no player movement. As of U13, player movement is permitted. These are the parameters. For example, not more than 5% of your membership in that age group can come from the outside. No more, a bit like we used to have with the mute rule. What I didn't appreciate about the mute rule is
Yeah.
whether you were a player that left your club because your club no longer had the category, or you left because you felt you needed a different environment, mute applied regardless. And I don't think that was correct. I think the significance and the application of the mute rule to me didn't make sense, because you have to look at the origins of the player movement. If the
Yeah.
player movement is voluntary, then this is kind of the process you need to go through. If the player movement is necessary because the club that I belong to no longer offers me this, I'm not going to delay my progression and my development for a year, so I should not be penalized, so to speak. So I think
Correct.
we need
Yeah.
to look at that. So I think origin of the dilemma or of the issue is extremely important, to know how do you apply the parameter. But I'm a true believer that parameters need to be set in place to ensure that people respect it. And to me, player movement is a symptom of your grassroots program. If you're doing a very good job from U4 to U12, your player movement should be limited. You
Yeah.
should be able to turn around at U13, 14, 15 and say, because of all the work we've put in for the past 6, 7, 8 years, these are the types of teams we're able to produce at this level, and this level. Otherwise, what is the true measure of your grassroots program if at U13, U14, U15, 50% of your teams come from the outside? And it's a question to me
Yeah.
too of respect for your membership. If a child and a family have been with you since they're 4, 5, and 6, again, let's be
Yeah.
realistic here. There has to be a progress. There has to be a development. If that child that came in at U4, 5 has been with me for 8, 9 years, but all they want to do is recreation, I need to respect that as well. But if this player that's been with me since the age of 5, and at U13, U14, there's a constant progress. They're not maybe at the level I expect them to be that right now, or I need them to be, but there's constant progress. There's engagement. There's commitment. You keep working with that player.
Yeah.
We need to keep that in mind. I think the essence of what we do is extremely important, and I think that if Soccer Quebec finds a way to fine tune that, we need to have the conversations that the regions and the clubs will be on board. I'd just like to go back to one comment you made about
Yeah.
listening and consulting, and I think people feel that now with me here, for example, that they're going to have that listening ear. They've had it, and they will continue to have it. But I also believe that at some point decisions need to be made, and I believe that rules need to be followed.
Yeah.
And I think there's roles and responsibilities that need to be respected. So if the federation, after extensive analysis, consultation, we come to a decision, the decision is this, it needs to be followed thereafter. We can't and at that point we can't say, oh, they're not listening to us, they're not hearing us. Listening is for the consultation process. Once a decision is made, we know that not 100% of the people will be happy, but the expectation is that it will be followed. And that's in any process. So sometimes that nuance between, oh, I'm happy to be part of the consultation process, it's there. When the decision is made and it's not in favor of my way of thinking, all of a sudden we'll turn around and say, they're not listening. Doesn't mean we're not listening anymore. It
Right.
just means a decision was
Yeah.
made for the better good of the system as a whole. And
Yeah.
it's not easy, because Quebec is a big province, as Canada is a big nation, and we
Hmm.
have different realities, and we understand that it's not easily applicable to everybody. I think where the role of the federation becomes extremely important is that once a decision is made, we need to understand and identify the regions or the clubs that maybe may struggle or have different challenges. Then it's our role to help them. So if I've
Right.
set this in motion, this is the expectation, how can I help you get there? And it might take you 3 or 5 steps to get there, where somebody else will take them 2. And that's okay, because there are different paces for different regions, for different clubs. And the licensing program is the proof that that's what it is, right? We're
Yeah.
recognizing clubs for where
Hmm.
they are at any given time, and the progress they're expected to maintain over the course of a number of years. So I think it goes
Yeah.
hand in hand.
Yeah. I agree. We all just gotta hope that the message gets passed and that everyone is gonna be open-minded, like you said, to the idea. And you nailed it perfectly. And I agree with you 100%. I believe soccer could be better for everyone if everyone puts their ego aside and puts the needs of the child first and foremost. I believe
Absolutely.
more than half of the issues we discuss on a frequent basis would just disappear because of that sole reason. So hopefully more awareness and more education and forward-minded thinking will be helpful in that regard. So
Yes,
Felicia,
absolutely.
took up a lot of your time. I know you have another meeting to go to, so just some quick fire questions before we let you go. Your favorite team?
Serie A, Roma.
Okay, not bad. At least it's not Inter, so I'm happy about that. Did you have a favorite player growing up?
Growing up, uh, you know what? I appreciated
Or even
Marta.
now, if there's someone that you
To me, a
really like to
female player
watch?
that I appreciate, I mean, I appreciate some of our female national team players, but Marta to me has been
Mhm.
the essence of a footballer. You know,
Okay.
I don't say she's a female player or a male player. She's just a
Yeah.
football player. Like I love the essence of everything she brings, and people will laugh because she has that mark of the red lipstick. So she keeps that feminine side, but she's a
Yeah.
true warrior, and she goes head to head, and I admire her for the willingness she's had to break down barriers and all the time she stayed in the sport. So I think if I had to put my name behind one player that to me represents female and male soccer players because of the
Yeah.
longevity of her career, and because of the fact that she's grown through it and she's a fighter. I think Marta would be my player.
Okay, so now I have a little delicate question. Little Felicia, when she was her daughter's age,
Mhm.
better than the daughter or the daughter's more talented?
Oh, by far, my daughter is much more talented. I mean,
Oh, really? Okay.
oh yeah, yeah. No, I live the sport through the eyes, through my eyes
Okay.
of watching my kids, both my son Stefano
Yeah.
and Maya, fantastic
Yeah.
soccer players. I mean, Stefano dabbled, yeah, high elite hockey as well, so very, very good. Still
Okay.
playing it today on a more
Yeah.
recreational. My daughter finished playing collegial soccer last year. She plays in the position of a midfielder. Fantastic view. I mean, I find her, yeah, I'm gonna stop being a mom who's extremely proud of her kids because I could go on
Yeah.
and on, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm nothing compared to my kids' talent. I have a lot of passion, and they
Yeah.
brought a lot of talent to that passion. So I'm a very, very proud mom of how they play the sport and
Yeah.
how they were athletes in it. And it's thanks to them that today I find myself here, honestly, because if they had chosen another sport, maybe I would have volunteered in that other sport, and maybe
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
passion for soccer a little on the side. But I believe in destiny, and I believe that we're brought down a path that we work hard to get to, but that it's also some external elements help us get there. So I like to
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
my kids helped me get here today.
Good stuff. And the last question, the most important one. You come home from a long day at work, you're making pasta for your kids. Are you making penne lisce or penne rigate?
Rigate, che lisce.
Yes, that's the right answer.
The tomato sauce is never as good on a penne lisce than it is on a
Yeah, it
rigate.
just slides off. So very good. You chose the right. My friend Steve's gonna be happy. We always ask that question. So when people choose lisce, we're like, what? That doesn't make any sense.
Maybe with broccoli, but not sauce.
Yeah. So, Felicia, thank you once again for participating on our little podcast. I know you have a lot of activities in your new role, but we really appreciate your time. I'm just going to do a little outro video. Just stay on after. I'll say bye offline. So, thanks again. Best of luck with Soccer Quebec. And we hope there'll be some new changes with a new voice and just to make things better for all the kids. To enjoy the sport and want to play it and not leave it later on and stick to it as long as possible because we do love the beautiful game.
Absolutely. We have the same intentions. Thanks again, Marcello, for the time here. It was a real pleasure chatting with you and exchanging, and especially talking about soccer and talking about the players, the kids at the end of the day. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No problem. My pleasure. Take care.